Hey there, I'm Ethan, 20 years old. That Saturday had that slow, lazy vibe where everything just kind of drifted by. I was lounging around at home, scrolling through my phone like usual when I noticed I'd missed a call from Noah. He'd left his headphones at my place the night before after we hung out and wanted to grab them back. Didn't seem like a big deal to me, so I picked them up from the table and shot him a text saying I'd swing by. Noah lived just across town, not far at all, easy ride, nothing complicated. I figured his mom, Vanessa, would be home like she usually was, though she mostly stayed in her room or kept to herself. I never really thought much about her, aside from the fact that she looked pretty amazing for someone her age. She had to be in her early 40s, though you'd never guess it by looking at her. To me, she was just always Noah's mom, nothing more. That was it. No second thoughts, no expectations. So when I knocked on the door, I figured Noah would answer. But instead, it was her. She opened the door with nothing but a towel wrapped around her, hair still damp from the shower. She looked a little surprised, but not embarrassed. I didn't know where to rest my eyes, so I instinctively looked away. Was the air suddenly heavy, or was it just me overthinking? Hey, Ethan, she said with a smile. Noah stepped out for a bit. What brings you over? I stumbled over my words for a second, then held up the headphones like a peace offering. Just dropping these off. Didn't realize you'd be in the middle of anything. She let out a soft laugh and tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear. Oh, I'm not busy, she said, casual as ever. Just got out of the shower. Then came the question, want to come in for a bit? I hesitated, unsure if I should, but I went in anyway. She wasn't exactly a stranger, but something about her felt different now. Up until that point, I'd always seen her as the calm, composed mom type. Never once did I think I'd feel anything beyond that. We sat in the living room and she handed me a drink. At first, the conversation was light and easygoing, nothing out of the ordinary. But as we kept talking, I started noticing she was opening up in ways I hadn't expected. She talked about life, about how things around her were shifting. How even when she was surrounded by people, she sometimes felt completely alone. And for a moment, it didn't feel like I was chatting with my best friend's mom anymore. It was just the two of us having a real, honest moment. And the way she looked at me, it was like she genuinely cared about what I had to say. Something inside me shifted right then. I started seeing her through a different lens. She wasn't just Noah's mom anymore, there was more to her. Then she smiled, soft and a little mysterious. You've grown up so much, Ethan. It's hard to believe, she said. I remember you and Noah running through this house like little tornadoes. I wasn't sure what to say, so I just gave a small nod. But the energy in the room had changed, there was something new in the air. Unspoken, but you could feel it. There was this quiet spark, this subtle tension, and I wasn't sure what it meant. But I knew one thing, I wasn't ready to leave just yet. She got up and headed toward the kitchen, and I followed without thinking. As she walked past me, I caught the fresh scent of her, still clean from the shower, soft and warm. And for a second, she didn't feel like Noah's mom anymore. She just felt like a woman. A person with her own story and her own needs. Thanks for stopping by, she said, turning to face me. I really needed someone to talk to today. I gave her a small smile and felt this calm warmth in my chest. Anytime, I told her. Even as I stepped out the door, I knew something between us had shifted. Something unsaid had started to take root and I didn't know where it might lead. The next time I saw Vanessa wasn't planned. I was out picking up some groceries for dinner when we bumped into each other in one of the aisles. She was holding a jar of marinara sauce, squinting at the label with this tiny furrow in her brow. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. How had I never noticed how naturally beautiful she was? It wasn't just her looks, it was the way she moved, the calm confidence she carried. She had this quiet understanding, like she knew something the rest of us didn't. I hadn't expected to run into her, and honestly, I didn't know how to react. We hadn't spoken much since that morning with the towel and headphones. Still, that moment had stayed with me. The way she smiled, the way she looked at me, it lingered in my mind. But I told myself it was just a weird one-off. That is, until she looked up and spotted me. Ethan, she said, her voice soft, steady, welcoming in a way that made you relax. I smiled back, trying to keep things casual. Hey, Vanessa. Didn't expect to see you here. She gestured to her cart and said, just grabbing a few things for dinner. Then she asked, need anything? Simple question, right? But somehow that one question turned into a full-on conversation. We ended up talking about dinner, the weather, basic stuff. But underneath it all, there was something else. A hum of tension, a quiet undercurrent. A few glances. A couple of shared smiles. And then out of nowhere, she asked, are you doing anything tonight? She said it like it was no big deal, like she wasn't expecting much. But I could tell she was feeling out the moment. I didn't have an answer ready. I just shrugged and said, not much. Just laying low at home. She gave me a soft little smile. Noah's out with his buddies tonight. I was thinking of making dinner. Then she added, you should come by. It'd be nice to have some company. That offer completely threw me off. My first instinct was to politely turn her down. I mean, besides Noah, what else did we really have in common to talk about? But the way she said it, it made it hard to say no. Before I could even second-guess myself, I heard the words come out of my mouth, yeah, sure. And just like that, it was said. I didn't fully realize what I was stepping into. But later that evening, as I walked beside her back to her place, there was this tight, nervous feeling in my chest. It was like this low hum inside me, like I was walking into something I hadn't prepared for. Her house looked just as warm and familiar as always, but the second I stepped inside, something felt different. The smell of home-cooked food hung in the air, filling the space with this cozy, almost too inviting warmth. Vanessa was already in the kitchen, humming quietly while stirring something on the stove. I stood there in the doorway for a moment, just watching her. And suddenly it hit me. The woman I was looking at didn't feel like the same Vanessa I used to know. Sure, she looked the same, but there was something else about her, something more open, more real. Go ahead and have a seat, she called out over her shoulder. Dinner's almost ready. I sat down at one of the kitchen chairs, doing my best not to seem uneasy. She moved around the kitchen like she belonged there, which, of course, she did, but it still felt like I was seeing her in a new light. Meanwhile, I just sat there, trying to make sense of what was happening inside me. It wasn't just how she looked or how at ease she seemed. It was the way she made me feel, like I wasn't just some kid her son used to hang out with. Dinner was easy. The conversation flowed without effort. There were no awkward pauses or forced small talk. We talked about life and how it rarely goes the way you think it will. She shared stories about her younger years and how she missed that feeling of spontaneity, the thrill of not knowing what's next. She admitted that with Noah gone so often, things had settled into a kind of dull routine. When she said that, there was a slight crack in her voice. It felt like she'd been holding that in for years, pretending everything was fine when it really wasn't. I didn't have any brilliant advice to give, I just nodded and let her talk. And even in my silence, I noticed things. Her eyes would brighten when she talked about something she cared about. Her laughter wasn't polite, it was genuine. She wasn't just Noah's mom in that moment. She was a woman, with her own thoughts, emotions, and a life that extended far beyond motherhood. When we finished eating, I started gathering up the dishes and said, thanks for dinner. She looked at me and smiled. And for a second, her eyes told me something deeper than her words ever could. I'm really glad you came over, she said. It's been a long time since I had a real conversation with anyone. I didn't have a clever reply, so I gave her a small nod. But I think we both knew something between us had shifted. There was no need to spell it out. When I went to leave, she hugged me. It was simple, casual, nothing over the top. But her hand lingered on my back just a second longer than it needed to. And that second stayed with me. Take care, Ethan, she said softly, almost like a whisper. My mind was spinning as I walked back to my car. The night had started off so normal, but by the time it ended, something inside me had shifted. I couldn't put it into words. She hadn't done anything overt or wrong. But the way she listened, the way she looked at me, it made me feel something honest. Like there was a real connection between us, something different. I'd been to Noah's house more times than I could count, but this time it didn't feel the same. And I hated how often I thought about it in the days that followed. I kept trying to shove it out of my head. Tried to pretend like none of it had happened. Then a few days later, Noah called and asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I figured getting out would clear my head a bit. But the second I walked into the bar, there she was, Vanessa, sitting at the counter with a couple of friends. She noticed me right away, gave me a warm smile, and waved. And without thinking, I waved back. Her smile had this relaxed warmth to it, something that hadn't been there before. Whatever it was, it stirred something in me. Hey, Ethan, she said as I walked over. Didn't expect to see you tonight. I gave a casual shrug, trying to play it cool. Just hanging out with Noah. I didn't know you'd be here. She let out a light laugh. Yeah, I was planning to catch up with some old friends, she said. It's been a while since I had a proper night out. Her eyes held onto mine just a second longer than what felt casual. And just like that, the tension crept back in. That low, constant buzz between us, it never really went away. Always right there, under the surface. I probably should have stepped away. Said good evening and gone to meet up with Noah. But I didn't. Instead, I slid into the seat beside her. We chatted. We laughed. Acted like none of it was unusual. Like there wasn't something quietly pulsing between us. Eventually, Noah showed up and joined the table. The three of us sat there, swapping old school stories and laughing about the dumb stuff we used to do. But even with all the noise and conversation, my mind kept drifting. Every time Vanessa glanced my way, I felt it. That shift. That subtle spark that made something stir deep in my chest. Her laughter. Her sideways looks. They hit different now. There was something happening and I didn't fully understand it. It was like we were both holding on to a secret we didn't have the guts to speak out loud. Then, at one point, Noah got up to grab another round of drinks. And just like that, it was just me and her. I hadn't planned to ask, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. So, how have you really been, Vanessa? She paused. Her smile faded just a little. And for a second, I saw something real in her eyes, unguarded. I'm okay, she said softly. Just been feeling kind of lonely lately. That honesty caught me off guard. It was like she cracked open a door, letting me see a version of her I hadn't seen before. Not Noah's mom. Just her. Yeah, I nodded. I get that. It's not always easy. She gave me a faint nod in return and for a few seconds we just sat in a quiet stillness. But it wasn't awkward. It felt peaceful in a strange way. I wanted to say more. Wanted to offer something, some comfort, anything. But nothing came out. So I just looked at her, wondering if she truly meant what she said. Or maybe she was gently trying to say something more. Noah came back, and the moment ended like it had never happened. But inside, something had shifted. That night, something in me changed. Vanessa didn't feel like just a parent anymore. There was a different kind of light around her now. A kind that felt a little dangerous. Later, as we all wrapped up and left, I walked with Noah to the car, but my mind was still back at that table. What did she mean by lonely? Was she bored? Or was she quietly reaching out for something more? As soon as I got home, I collapsed on the couch and played the whole evening back in my head. That dinner, that was a kind of confession. And the look in her eyes, it stayed with me. That night wasn't just another random outing. Something deeper was brewing between us. Something left unsaid but real. And the craziest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to fight it anymore. The next few days felt heavy. I couldn't stop replaying the bar scene and the way Vanessa had opened up. That calm, almost quiet honesty in her voice. The way she looked at me like she was trying to find something behind my eyes. There was a pressure in the air I couldn't ignore. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything. That it was just a weird, one-off moment. But deep down, I knew better. Noah and I had always been tight. Best friends since forever. But now, even when we hung out, my mind would wander. It would drift right back to her. To Vanessa. And I hated that about myself. I hated how those thoughts just wouldn't go away. The way she smiled. The quiet confidence she walked with. It all felt different now. So, that Saturday, I made up my mind to clear my head. I hit up Noah and asked if he wanted to shoot some hoops at the park. Felt like old times. I figured maybe if I got moving, I could shake this off. When I got to the court, Noah was already working on his jump shot. He glanced over and grinned when he saw me. Took you long enough, he said, tossing me the ball. I forced a smile and said, had a few things to deal with. We played hard for about an hour. Joking, trash talking, trying to one-up each other. But no matter how fast we ran or how hard we played, my head just wasn't in the game. My body might have been on the court, but my head was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere warm, confusing, and impossible to ignore. Eventually, we took a break, sitting on the edge of the court, letting the silence fill the space. Out of nowhere, Noah asked, "You think my mom's doing all right?" He wiped the sweat from his forehead. His eyes locked on something across the pavement. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He shrugged, still staring at the ground. "She's just been different lately, distant, not like herself." He didn't sound angry, more puzzled than anything. "I don't know if she's stressed or what, but it's like something's off." That landed harder than I expected. I'd always seen Vanessa as calm, put together, someone who never cracked. But maybe I'd only seen what she wanted people to see. Maybe I never really looked. I mean, have you talked to her about it? I asked, my voice low. He shook his head. Not really. Every time I try, she just brushes it off. His tone dropped a little. I don't want to push her, but I can tell she's not okay. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to be honest, to tell him what I'd seen in her eyes, what I'd felt. How different she seemed now. How different I felt, too. But I kept it in. Not now. Maybe not ever. Maybe she just needs a little space, I offered, trying to keep my voice light. Yeah, he muttered. But there was doubt in his voice. I could tell he wasn't buying it. We finished the game and headed back to his apartment. But my gut was tight the entire way. Like I was walking toward something I didn't fully understand and couldn't pull away from. As soon as we stepped through the door, there she was. Vanessa was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine like everything was normal. When she saw us, she looked up and smiled. "Hey guys," she said warmly. But I caught it, the tiredness in her eyes. The way she held herself too still, too straight, like she was putting on a show. "Hey Mom," Noah said, dropping onto the couch beside her. "You okay?" I asked, trying not to sound like I was looking too closely. Vanessa hesitated just a beat before nodding. "Yeah, it's just been one of those long weeks." She said it like it was nothing, but I knew better. She was brushing it off like always. I didn't push, mostly because I didn't know how. My heart was pounding louder than I wanted to admit, so I slipped into the kitchen, pretending I was just thirsty. Really, I just needed a second, a breath, a break from the weight of that room. I reached for a glass, but then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Vanessa in the doorway, arms folded loosely across her chest. "Ethan," she said gently, her voice calm but direct. "Can we talk for a minute?" I spun around, surprised. Yeah, sure. What's up?" She stepped into the room and quietly closed the door behind her. Each step she took narrowed the space between us, and I felt that tightness crawl back into my chest. I wanted to thank you," she said, eyes drifting somewhere near mine, but not quite meeting them. "For the other night. It meant a lot to me." I swallowed hard. Her words landed heavier than I'd expected. "Of course," I said softly. "I'm always around if you ever want to talk." She gave a small nod, and we stood there, locked in a thick, wordless quiet that said more than anything either of us could have spoken aloud. Then, maybe just to break the tension, she said, "Noah's a good kid, you know. He's been through a lot, but he's got a good heart." I nodded, not totally sure where she was going with it. But she didn't look away. Her eyes held mine a little longer than before, and that same familiar current, that spark I'd felt before, was humming again, pulled tight between us like a wire about to snap. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He really does." She smiled, but there was something else behind that smile, something I couldn't quite pin down. And for a second, I wondered if she was thinking what I was thinking. I nearly asked her, nearly said something, but I didn't. I just stood there, caught in the stillness with her, not knowing what to do next. Finally, she stepped back slightly and said, "Thank you again, Ethan." "Anytime," I said. But even as I said it, I knew it didn't mean the same thing it used to. A week passed after that moment in the kitchen. The conversation itself hadn't been dramatic or loud, but it stuck with me. Every time I saw Vanessa after that night, the air between us felt different, charged. I couldn't tell if she felt it too, or if I was just imagining things, reading too much into nothing. Still, the energy between us had shifted, and no matter what I did, I couldn't shake it. Noah and I kept hanging out like always, same jokes, same energy, but it didn't help. Not really. Every time Vanessa walked into the room, my eyes followed her without thinking. I started noticing the small stuff. The way her head tilted when she was making a point. How her eyes would hold mine just a breath longer than necessary. It wasn't obvious, barely noticeable even, but I caught it. And I felt it. Then Saturday rolled around. Noah had plans with some friends, and I ended up alone at their place. It hadn't been the plan, but I didn't mind. Truth is, I kind of needed the quiet. I wanted space to figure out what the hell was going on in my head and in my chest. I was sitting on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I heard her voice call from down the hall. "Ethan." I looked up, surprised to see her standing there. Her expression was unreadable. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was already pounding. She walked into the room, paused for a beat, then asked, "Can we talk?" That simple question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Yeah, of course," I said, setting my phone aside. She came over and sat next to me on the couch. We weren't touching, but the space between us was small. Barely anything. The air felt thick, like the walls had moved closer. "I've been thinking a lot about our recent conversations," she began, her voice quiet, careful. "And I feel like I owe you an apology." I turned to her, caught completely off guard. That was not where I thought this was going. "I know I've seemed a little distant," she went on. "There's just been a lot going on, and I guess I didn't want to put that on anyone else." I blinked, watching her, trying to read her face. "I mean, it's okay," I finally said. "You don't have to apologize." She smiled softly at that, but I could tell something in her wasn't fully convinced. Like she was still holding back. I appreciate it, she said, but I think I might have crossed a line with you. My heart skipped. This was the moment I hadn't known I was waiting for. And yet I had dreaded it too. I didn't know where it was going to lead, but I couldn't stop myself from listening. What do you mean? I asked, my voice dropping, unsure and cautious. Vanessa took a slow breath and glanced down at her hands, gently fiddling with the hem of her shirt. I think you already know, she said softly. There's been something happening between us. And I can't keep pretending it's not there. I went still. Her words hit straight to the center of me. Of course I'd felt it. But hearing her say it out loud made it real, made it weighty, and suddenly much more complicated. I'm not trying to make things weird, Ethan, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. I don't know how to handle it. But I can't ignore it anymore. I looked at her, my mind spinning in every direction. Everything inside me was screaming that this was wrong, that I shouldn't be here. But I was. I was right here. I don't want it to be weird either, I said, trying to keep steady, trying not to let the spiral. But I don't know what you want me to say. She held my gaze, steady and unblinking. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, humming with everything we weren't willing to admit out loud. Then she reached out. Her hand grazed mine. Light? Almost nothing. But it lit something inside me. That small touch sent a current straight through me. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. This isn't just a crush, Ethan, she said, her voice quiet but certain. Her eyes locked onto mine. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't want to ignore it. And I don't think I can. In that moment, everything hit at once. The guilt, the confusion, the longing, the fear. I knew what the stakes were. I knew what this would mean if it ever came to light. But I also knew something real was happening here. And part of me didn't want it to stop. Are you sure? I asked, my voice unsteady. Whatever this is, are you sure? She nodded. And this time, her fingers curled around mine, deliberate, steady, warm. I'm sure, she whispered. And just like that, whatever invisible line we'd been tiptoeing along vanished. We didn't say another word. There wasn't anything else to say. But the air around us had changed completely. We both felt it, that shift in the air, the weight of what we'd just admitted. And from that moment forward, everything changed. It's been a year since that night. 1 full year of carrying a quiet secret between us. A year of juggling our day-to-day lives with the soft, private time we carved out just for ourselves. In a strange way, it feels like we've lived an entire lifetime in those quiet, stolen hours. We didn't talk about it much about us. What started that night, she answered the door wearing just a towel, never really faded. It just settled into the rhythm of our lives. Became a quiet constant. It felt oddly natural, but also delicate. Like something we had to protect, something we kept close and guarded. From the very beginning, we agreed on one thing: our happiness mattered. And that happiness came from trust. The kind of trust that let us be completely honest with each other while keeping the rest of the world at arm's length. We created something of our own small space, a kind of private world no one else could touch. But the guilt never really went away. Every time I saw Noah, there was this tiny twist in the back of my mind. Not because I thought he needed to know, but because carrying something this big changes you. It leaves a mark. Still, I never once regretted the choice. We both made it. And no matter how complicated or messy it got, being with her always felt right. Vanessa and I saw each other whenever we could. Not too often. We never pushed it too far. Everything stayed low-key. Quiet. Hidden. The hardest part? When Noah would stop by. We'd smile, keep a little distance, act like everything was totally normal. We kept our hands to ourselves. We kept it friendly. But it was in those little moments, the quick glances, the soft smiles, the brush of a hand in passing. Those were the things that held us together. Those tiny, invisible threads were everything. When we were alone in her house, we'd sometimes talk about what would happen if the truth came out. There was never a real plan, just vague ideas and half-spoken thoughts. But we didn't linger there too long. We stayed rooted in the now. In the calm, quiet spaces where we didn't owe anyone an explanation. Where we could just exist. It was a calm Saturday evening, almost exactly a year since it all began. I was back on Vanessa's couch, the same place where it started. The house was peaceful. Noah was out with friends again, and we had the place to ourselves. By now, it all felt normal. Comfortable in a way that had once felt impossible. We'd learned how to live like this. Quiet. Cautious. Connected. We didn't need to constantly unpack our feelings. The relationship had settled into something steady. Something real. It had never been conventional. But it had grown into something I couldn't imagine giving up. Vanessa sat beside me, just as stunning as ever. But there was a softness to her now. A calm in the way she moved, in the way she breathed. We had learned how to carry the weight of what we were. We'd grown into it. And somewhere along the way, I'd found peace. I'd figured out how to make this feel like home. Do you ever think about how we ended up here? She asked quietly, her voice warm and low. I smiled, leaning back into the cushions. All the time, I said. Honestly, I still can't believe we've lasted this long. I looked at her, and what used to feel like disbelief had started to feel more like gratitude. It doesn't feel like a year, I added. She laughed softly and leaned her head against my shoulder. Right? It doesn't, she murmured. But sometimes it feels like this has always been our place. Like this was meant to happen. I nodded slowly and let my hand brush against hers. Yeah, it's weird, I said. But the good kind of weird. I never pictured my life turning out like this. But now that I was here, I couldn't imagine it any other way. She tilted her head and looked at me with that expression she always wore when she wanted time to freeze. I feel the same, she whispered. All things considered, I think we've done pretty well. She smiled, sure of herself. I'm glad we kept it just between us. It's ours. And she was right. That was the most important part. This wasn't about anyone else. It was something we built quietly, intentionally, and together. I'm happy, I said softly, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. We're happy. That's what matters. We didn't say much after that. We didn't have to. We just sat there, side by side, wrapped in a silence that felt complete. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. A whole year had passed, a year lived quietly in plain sight. And somehow we made it work. We kept our secret. We protected what we had. And through it all, we held on to the one thing that mattered most, each other. As the evening went on and the sky outside faded into night, one thought kept rising in my mind. This right here is how I want it to stay. It's not perfect. It's messy and strange and complicated. But it's ours. And sometimes that's enough.